week, the Salvage squad are heading north to rescue a little bit of Blackpool's history. Down south, we've got the red double-decker bus, but up here in Blackpool, they have the tram, and that's what we're after. Part train, part bus. Blackpool's got dozens of them, some almost 100 years old, and still trundling around 6 million people up and down the prom. As much a part of a Blackpool holiday as a stick of rock and a dodgy landlady. The tram we're going to restore is a 1952 Coronation class, built the year our Liz got her crown. It was designed to be the queen of Blackpool's fleet, a Rolls-Royce of the prom. Once there were 25 of these beauties on the Golden Mile, but now there are none. If we get ours fixed, it will be the only original Coronation tram still working. But there sure is a lot to do. So that's our challenge, to get number 304 back on the tracks and trundling along the seafront just as she did 50 years ago. But at the moment, she's a long way from the sea. Here we are in St Helens, 30 miles south of Blackpool, and apparently our tram is being stored behind the green door. Wow. Have a look at this lot. This is the old St Helens tram shed, now home to 95 classic old buses. And somewhere at the back of this lot, the squad have been checking out the tram.
God, where do you start?
And looking for all its bits and bobs.
We're going to need these.
It's owned by a chap called Philip Higgs.
The doors slide into here, rather like London Underground.
I'm here to meet him. If only I could find him in this maze of buses.
Really?
It's not that heavy.
After 20 minutes of wandering around, I finally found something that looked like a tram, and the aforementioned Mr. Higgs. So, Phil, let's face it, you are Mr. Tram.
I know, it's sad, isn't it, really?
I don't know about that. When did it begin?
It began when my mum and dad used to take me to Blackpool. They used to go on the fun fair with my brothers and sisters, and I used to say, look, I don't want to go on the fun fair, I just want to watch these trams go by. They were fascinating to me, more so than riding up and down on some roller coaster.
In a strange way, I suppose it's kind of flat roller coaster.
Well, that's right, yeah, it was still a fun ride to me.
Yeah. And how did you become the proud owner of a Blackpool tram yourself?
I actually wrote a book on Blackpool trams, and then with the proceeds of the royalties that came off that, I actually bought this tram.
Wow, extraordinary.
For £600. Sounds, you know, it sounds like nothing, but it was actually quite a lot then.
Well, it's pretty extraordinary that you wrote a book when you were 16 about trams, firstly, but to then spend the money you made from it on a tram, when others would be buying guitars or record players or...
And there was me, yeah, there was me buying a Blackpool tram. It was a bit difficult to explain to my sort of mates at college.
I'm
yeah,
sure it was.
Difficult.
I mean, you know, half the notion of buying a guitar was maybe to get introduced to some of the opposite sex. I can't imagine a tram necessarily has the same...
Funnily enough, actually, the opposite sex weren't all that interested. And still aren't.
Philip's obsession with the magical world of the tram got worse the older he got, and he spent 10 years working as a tram driver before becoming a transport consultant, championing the cause of the tram all over the country. It was in 1984 that Philip first got our tram, but it's a big thing for a 16-year-old to take on. So although he and his mates have been tinkering with it down the years, it's basically still a wreck.
I've driven tram, you know, virtually every tram in the fleet, but I've never driven this one.
You're telling me you've owned this tram for 20 years, but you've never driven it, nor indeed seen it running?
Never. Never, because this tram was phased out before. I mean, when this tram was phased out, I was actually only 3 years old.
OK, Phil, well, here's the deal. We'll take it away and we'll do it up, but you won't be allowed to see it until it's absolutely perfect.
OK, but I'll believe it when I see it.
You managed not being able to see it for a bit?
Well, I might have to do some peeping.
No. Promise no?
OK.
All right. Fingers crossed we'll get it done, because it's a tough one. The only place we can fix it is at the tram workshops in Blackpool itself. It's home to the largest fleet of trams in Europe, and if we need any extra help, the place is full of the best tram engineers in the world. The journey north will be her first in 18 years, but it's no easy task. There's 6 ancient buses to move for a kick-off. I've always wanted to do this.
Cliff Richard rides again.
Then she's winched onto a 30-ton low loader for the drive north. It's a pretty unique vehicle, normally used for shifting railway engines around the country.
This is the first time I've seen this move since 1986 when it first came here.
Once secured, she's on the move again. A 2-hour drive up the motorway to her old home, the tram workshops at Blackpool. As she arrives, the local tram spotters are on hand to witness a historic occasion. With the spotters snapping away at ours, I was off down the prom to sample some trams that actually move. Wow. There's over 80 of these things whizzing up and down between here and Fleetwood. It really is like going back in time. They first arrived in Blackpool in 1885, but they reached their prime in the 1930s, when the then boss, a chap called Walter Luff, introduced luxury trams like this balloon class, which still earn their keep on the prom over 70 years later. The key to any tram is the main control unit in the roof, and we've brought in tram expert Brian Pickup to help restore ours.
It looks disgustingly complicated.
It is very, very complicated, this, what we call a knitting machine, and we're going to have quite a struggle with that when we get it down.
So that takes the electricity down
It takes
through
electricity
the pole, from the cables
pole,
above.
and then it goes into that control system.
What it does is it actually controls the amount of electricity you're letting through.
It controls the electricity
so
going
it's like
down.
a scale electrics controller.
Like a scale electrics, exactly the same thing.
The power reaches the control unit via the trolley pole. To make the tram move, the driver simply pulls a lever in the cab and the electricity begins to flow to the 4 motors mounted underneath the body. The tram can be driven from either end. When they want to go the other way, the conductor switches round the pole and the driver changes cabs. But there's a lot more to fix than the control unit. Not only are the sides missing, but the roof's none too good either.
That can't stay on for sure.
And underneath, nothing's run for years.
Right, what have we got here, Brian? These are the motors?
These are the motors.
And how many of these do we
There are
have?
4 altogether.
Really?
Yes,
And how long has it been sitting here?
it's been about 20 odd years since it was used, so really they want a thorough check.
So it's not exactly going to be
They'll
easy,
be full of
is it?
damp, they'll be full of damp, it won't be an easy job.
Right, well, I have to say this job's mine.
It looks like that's a job for you.
All in all, this is one big job. At the moment, all we have is a shell of a tram with some dodgy wiring. To fix it, Jerry and Brian are going to have to refurbish the control unit in the roof. Axel's going to have to overhaul the 4 electric motors, whilst Claire's going to restore the tower that sits above the control unit and takes the 25-foot-long trolley pole that runs along the overhead cable. That done, they'll have to reclad the body with aluminium and paint it, then refurbish the 50-year-old interior. The tram's now been moved to the electrics bay, ready for the first big task, removing the huge main control unit. Claire and 2 electricians will be working in the frazzle zone, within striking distance of the 550-volt power lines, whilst Jerry waits below. To make sure no one is cooked, the first job is to switch off the juice. Then everybody literally locks the switch, taking their key with them. That way no one can switch on the power again when there's still someone on the roof.
So we're going to lift her up, spin her around slightly, and then drop it down. Do you know what sort of weight we're talking there?
No, not really.
No one's shifted one of these for years, and there are only 3 of them left in the world. So as the last cable's cut, they're in uncharted waters.
Right, should be clear now.
Down a touch. A bit more.
It's clear that.
We don't want to wreck it, we've only got this one.
Lowering the unit was fairly easy, but getting it out is proving more problematic. But don't worry, Jerry's in charge.
Right, stop. Stop everything. Right, get rid of this. Okay. Right, take it clear. Beautiful. What do you reckon? Whoa. Nice and slow.
Phew, he didn't blow it. Which is lucky, because this is no ordinary control unit. It was revolutionary in its day. Unlike the clunky units of earlier trams, its complex circuits were designed to give the ultra-smooth acceleration befitting the Queen of Trams. Down on the prom, I was still riding the old bone shakers. And I was beginning to notice something rather odd. I've been tram spotting now for a couple of hours, and I think I'm becoming a bit of an expert. I've even bought Philip's book. But one thing still puzzles me. I've seen loads of trams from the 1930s, quite a few from the 1980s, but none from the 1950s. Why? Our Coronation Tram was meant to be the tram of the future. With its sleek modern lines, it was meant to replace the old trams from the 1930s. But whilst they're still around, the Coronations were scrapped years ago. So that's my quest, to find out why the Coronation did a dinosaur and disappeared from the face of Blackpool Prom. The Salvage Squad's restoration of the 1952 Coronation class tram is getting underway nicely. It's made its journey back to Blackpool without a hitch, and the all-important control unit has been taken out.
We don't want to wreck it, we've only got this one.
And now Jerry and our tram expert Brian Pickup are beginning to check it over.
Yep, right then. Well, we'll start off by checking some of these connections, I think. Should be that one.
The control unit is no more than a great big electrical tap. Pushing a lever forward in the cab starts the flow of electricity to the motors. The more the lever is pushed forward, the more electricity flows and the faster the tram moves, just like opening a tap. To slow it down, you simply pull the lever back, and it's like turning off the tap again. The flow of electricity reduces, and the motors slow. It's decades since this one worked, and somehow all those wires have got a bit crossed.
Controls this. And so we should check which ones connect to each other.
Right, well, let's start with this one, which is marked LS, if you can find.
That's the line switch now. That should come in on this one.
Lucky we've got someone like Brian on board.
Ah, no, it doesn't. Just check that the meter works. Yes, the meter works. So we'll see which one it should come in on. Well, that looks like that's one problem we've got to solve already, because that circuit doesn't connect.
Lovely.
So we're going to have some fun here. I can
We
see
are,
that.
aren't we?
Yes.
MC1.
MC1, that's motor contact number 1. Now that should come in on that one there. And that doesn't connect either. Oh well.
Brilliant. Right,
Good,
fine,
not to
keep
worry.
going.
Yeah, we'll try another one.
BC, go on, brake
BC,
contact.
brake contact to 1.
Hey, I've got this.
Well, that should connect through to something. No? Oh well, we'll have to sort these out, won't we?
So what you're trying to tell me is it's supposed to have worked 30 years ago, and right now we've got not a sausage.
Not a sausage, but there again, things have been disconnected, so we'll have to go through this and sort it all out.
You're groping in the dark, aren't you?
We are groping in the dark, yes, but we'll carry on and see how far we get.
Now Jerry and Brian might be having a few problems making sense of that tangle of wires, but that control unit was to be the core of the Coronation's success. The technology behind its smoother and faster ride. The man who made it all happen was Walter Luff, Mr. Tram in Blackpool from 1933 to 1954. Sadly, he's dead now, but he's credited as the man who transformed Blackpool's trams in the 1930s, and I was keen to find out more about him from his daughter Daphne.
He had a 5-year plan, during which time he completely renovated the whole system, and he introduced a whole lot of new trams. They call them balloons, the big ones, and then the little ones are the rail coaches. And then there were some open deck things called boats.
Luff's new fleet were the pride of Blackpool for 20 years. But times move on, and Daphne's dad was keen to go one further and introduce a new tram that would be even better.
So this is where the Coronation came in. Which,
He wanted something that was faster and smoother.
yes, he wanted it to be more comfortable for the driver and the conductor as well. Give a little bit more space, because they were 50 feet long and 8 feet wide.
When it was unveiled, hundreds turned out to watch the Lord Mayor driving our Coronation along the prom. But behind the scenes, there was a battle going on in the council chambers, with many wanting to do away with the trams altogether and replace them with buses.
He had great arguments with, with the council and so on, but he was also fighting against sort of general opinion in the country, where other people had got rid of them and had all got these trolley buses. And they felt he was a dinosaur. In actual fact, he was far more forward-looking than any of the rest of them.
Before it entered public service, the anti-tram lobby did everything they could to discredit the new Coronation, even organising a public demonstration to prove that it was too big to go round one particularly sharp bend. But nothing would faze Walter Luff.
My father was at home with me and my mother, and at about 10:30 the phone rang, and it was Mr. Jack Parkinson, the traffic superintendent, and he said, "It's all right, sir, she's round." And my father said, "Oh, thank you very much," and he put the receiver down. And I was so surprised, because I said, "Well, weren't you could have enthused a bit, or said, weren't you pleased that it got round?" And he said, "Oh, no," I said, "I knew it would go round." So I said, "Well, I know you've done all you've worked it all out, so, mathematically and all the rest of it." He said, "Oh, no," he said, "she went round a fortnight ago. Mr. Bellhouse took her round at 2 o'clock in the morning."
Once the public got a chance to ride on them, however, it seems the problems for the Coronation were over.
I've heard that when they came out, people would actually miss a few trams just in the hope of getting on a Coronation.
Yes, that's quite true, they did, yes. And a lot of people just went for a ride along the promenade just for the sake of having ridden on one. They weren't really going anywhere, they just went there and back.
With all that popularity, Walter Luff's dream of a tram for the future must have seemed secure. Why then, when you can still take a ride on this balloon-class tram from the 1930s, are there no original Coronation-class trams in the fleet? Sadly, that was a question even the great man's daughter couldn't answer.
I know it's something to do with the controls, but to really find out, you really ought to talk to an old driver who's had actually driven one of the Coronation trams, because I don't think the people nowadays could possibly drive it, because it is so different.
So that's the next part of my quest, to find someone who actually drove one of these wonderful beasts. Back at the tram sheds, Claire and Axel are gearing up for their first big task, removing the 4 huge motors that power the tram. It's been moved over to a special pit so Axel can work underneath.
What's it look like down there?
Dirty, heavy. I think we're going to get this prop shaft off first, Claire.
Right, so we're dropping the motor, yeah?
Yeah, this big bit here.
It's a fairly straightforward job. Undo 12 bolts on the drive shaft, then another 4 big ones that actually hold the motor in.
Claire,
yeah?
have to get your foot off the edge. Oh, Claire, you're really going to get me in the face there, mate.
The only problem is that some of the nuts are stuck fast.
Mind my fingers.
Why suffer with a spanner when you can simply melt the nuts away?
Sorry?
This metal just turns into water.
So much more efficient than a spanner.
Done. That was amazing.
So it's all that hard spannering action?
Yeah.
Is that all of it?
Yeah, you should be able to punch these through now.
All right.
Now all that's needed is a jack underneath, 4 bolts whipped out from the top, and the whole lot can be dropped down and pulled out. Well, almost.
I'll give it another side a push and you pull, yeah?
When they've got the other 3 out, Axel's going to overhaul them at a specialist firm.
That's it.
Hopefully there'll be nothing too much wrong with them, but if there is, we'll be looking for 4 new motors.
That's a goodie.
As soon as I got back from Daphne's, I headed straight to the tram sheds, hoping to see a real transformation. But I was in for a disappointment.
Hello, stranger. How you doing?
Good. I've got to say, it doesn't look like much has changed in here, though.
Watch it.
Come on, mate. We've done loads of work. What you don't realise is that most of these trams only have 2 motors, and we had 4, and it was quite hard work getting them out. Wasn't it?
When we wrestled them. But we did it.
But I've got to say, having travelled on some ordinary trams, you can see how much wider and bigger the interior of this is.
Well, this is the ultimate 1952 tram, isn't it? They threw everything at it. Double the number of motors, make it bigger, better. The control unit, the thing that makes it go faster and slower, it's just out of this world. It's like something from Doctor Who. But we got it out, and Jerry's sorting that out at the moment with Brian. So,
Brian, he's our electrical expert.
yeah.
I've not met him yet. Where is he?
He's lurking down the front with Jerry.
I should go and meet him.
Keep up the good work. See you later, mate.
See you later.
Hello, Jerry.
Hello.
And you must be Brian.
I am.
Pleased to meet you.
How do you do?
What are we looking at here, Brian?
Well, this is the main control unit from the tram car there, and it normally lives up in the roof.
So basically this controls the flow of electricity to the motors.
That's correct, yes. It's controlled from the driver in the cab.
The complexity of the unit really pushed the technology of the 1950s to the max. Nowadays, all this lot would be replaced by a little black box of electronics. But when Jerry took me into the cab, the controls appeared to be simplicity itself.
Well, this is it. Forward for go, and back for stop.
As opposed to having a separate brake.
As opposed to having a separate brake. You've got the braking on this.
Although it looked dead simple, there's no other tram in the Blackpool fleet that has the accelerator and the brake combined in one control. And the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to find someone with experience of driving a Coronation before we let Philip loose on the prom. But if the Coronation's ever going to move, then its motors will have to be overhauled. Axel's taken them to a specialist firm, and hopefully they'll need no more than a 30-year service. But if there are any more problems than that, we'll be in trouble. Axel's teamed up with Dave Hesketh, a Jeremy Clarkson lookalike, who's in charge of the firm's motor overhaul department. And like Axel, when it comes to taking things apart, he's a man who prefers heat to a spanner.
It's been 30 years since that's been off.
With the end of the motor off, they can strip the rest of it with more conventional tools. The electric motor is in fact one of the simplest engines around. In essence, it consists of a series of electromagnets called the armature, which spin inside another set of permanent magnets. The electricity to power the electromagnets enters at the back via two bits of metal called bushes, rubbing against a ring of copper contacts around the axle.
Right, so this is what we've got. The armature here.
Yeah.
525 volts DC.
Yeah.
Into here.
Yeah.
Boost it up. This whole thing spins.
Yes.
Then gives us forward and backward motion of the axle.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Key to a smooth running motor are the copper contacts at the back of the motor where the electricity enters. It's important that they're clean and perfectly smooth. So Axel's going to use a lathe to take off just a few thousandth of an inch of metal to make them as good as new.
I know how Jay feels now, because if I make this cut too deep, I'll mess the whole job up. Almost there. 50 years of grime, now we have a brand new one.
It's perfect. You've got a perfect new copper.
You want to say that again? Huh? You want to say that again? It's perfect. I like that.
It's perfect, yeah.
That done, Axel can move on to refurbishing the metal brushes that will run on the newly cleaned contacts.
It's amazing. 50 years old, and it's brand new.
Once it's all back together, our motor heads for the test bay. It will spend its life whizzing around at 700 revs per minute. To make sure it's up to the job, Axel and Dave are going to spin it round at twice that speed. Either it will hum away nicely in a rather unspectacular way, or there'll be a big bang and a lot of blue smoke.
1200, 1300, 1400, 15, 15. All right, Dave. Averaging 1250.
That's okay, that is.
Excellent, mate. Oh, mate, I'm so happy. This.
50 years running there.
I know, and it's running so smooth.
Yeah, brilliant.
Brilliant indeed. It looks like the first of Axel's motors is ready to go back in the tram. 3 more to go, and we're in business. Meanwhile, back in Blackpool, Jerry's still stripping down the control unit. What makes it so special and complex are the 90 contacts that control the flow of electricity to the motors. Each one is like a switch, allowing a bit more power to flow down to the motors. Older control units only had 8 contacts, resulting in 8 jerky settings between off and full power. But it's these 90 contacts in our controller that are the key to the tram's gentle acceleration. Each one has to be stripped down and overhauled, and that's giving Jerry grief.
What's not supposed to happen? What was that? They're all bust.
Then, as Jerry gets to the end of stripping down the control unit, things get much worse, and the chances of Philip ever getting to drive his tram take a nosedive.
Earth's this?
Oh no. Liner running. We've had a fire in here. It's toast.
Very expensive toast at that. The whole ring, onto which the parts of the control unit are fixed, will have to be replaced. And that's not a job we can do ourselves.
It's a heap of scrap. What we need is a piece of material to replace it with that is not only insulating but heat-proof, but also can be bent in a circle and be capable of taking 1,001 holes. I don't know how to do that. I knew we were biting off more than we could chew when we took this thing on, and now we're in very, very serious stuck.
Too right we're in stuck. No ring, no controller. No controller, no tram. The squad are 3 months into the restoration of our Coronation Tram. The 4 motors have been overhauled and reinstalled, but the all-important control unit has thrown up some major problems.
We've had a fire in here.
With heavy hearts, Jerry and Brian have shipped it off to the same specialists who repaired the motors, to have a new framework made up to replace the one damaged by fire. Back in Blackpool, Claire's getting on with her task, refurbishing the huge trolley pole that will take over 500 volts of electricity down into the tram. First job, replacing the 50-year-old insulation.
There are just hundreds of jobs like this in restoration where it's just filthy, it's dirty, you take it all apart, and then when you put it back together, no one knows. No one really knows what you've done.
With the squad cracking on, I'd arranged to meet up with the Coronation's owner, Philip Higgs, for a game of snooker in the Tramworks canteen. Perhaps he could put me in touch with an old driver who'd actually driven one of our trams and could shed some light on their demise. Oh, unlucky, mate. It's obviously they're quite different to drive, aren't they? And I'm pretty sure there's no one here who's driven one, is there?
No, everyone that will have driven them will be retired by now. There's no one left at Blackpool Transport that's driven them.
So, if we wanted to find someone who had driven one, where would we start?
I think Blackpool Transport might be able to help us out,
Yeah.
maybe with some retired tram drivers that are on the books.
Well, I think that's what we're going to have to do, Phil, is try and find one of the old drivers to give us all a bit of instruction.
Yeah?
Maybe you can teach snooker as well.
So how's the tram getting on then, Suggs?
It's coming on. They've got the motors stripped and they've taken out the control units, but it's quite a job, yeah.
Yeah?
Good shot, Phil. Excellent, mate. Let's hope it's going a bit better than that. Outside, the weather was typical for late August. And the British summer was even entering the tram sheds. But you can't keep a good squad down.
Could be worse, could be on the beach.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
What's next then?
Lots of panels. I think I should get on with it.
Right you are.
Yeah.
Off you go.
The outside of the tram will be covered by a thin skin of aluminium panels, so Axel's popped over to the body shop to start cutting out the new ones. So as they don't vibrate against the metal frame of the tram, Claire and Jerry are getting into a bit of recycling, cutting out old seat covers and gluing them onto the framework. Where's Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen when you need him? The next job is to paint the back of each panel with a red oxide paint.
This red oxide, Joe, is fantastic, isn't it?
Oh, it's great. I love it.
Keeps all the rust off.
Goodness, Claire, we've got a regular Lowry over here.
With Jerry's masterpiece painted out, it's time to put on the first of the 70-odd panels that cover the body and the roof.
That's it. Whack it up. Just slide over a bit.
Oh, is he hanging over the panels? You drill them, I'll fill them. Well, 2 on. Many more to go. It looks good, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's beginning to look like a tram.
It's a start. It's a start.
Starts, yeah.
Start.
Plenty more to do.
The final part of the process is to put a simple aluminium bead over the joint to tidy it up.
You got that?
Yep.
Then. Should get that first one in then. It's looking good, isn't it?
It is. It's all coming together. Oh, and you've got to line the screw heads up properly. Because when you went on the other trams, they did it up and down the front. Every single screw head was lined up. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
With the bodywork coming together, the squad are making real progress. And things are shining at my end too. I've managed to track down Jack Nichols, an 83-year-old tram driver who drove a Coronation Tram when I was still at primary school.
It was great to drive them, you know. A roomy cab, decent seat, instead of a bit of wood with a bit of plastic on it. And you could sit down, you got all the controls around you, very handy, you know.
And beautiful to look at.
Well, I won't say beautiful, but certainly it was good looking, you know, and it had this different look, you see. It shone, as it were, in the sun as compared to the old green and cream of the other cars. It did stand out.
After hearing the good points, I had to ask Jack the killer question. If they were so great, why ain't they around today?
It was no problem until you could be driving sort of 99 times out of 100 until on that one occasion, 1 in 100 times, you would put the brake on and nothing would happen. And this was rather off-putting, to say the least, you know. The road was clear, just moved across, put some power on to take her across, and then, pshong, I missed it. There was a van crossed my path and missed it by about 3 inches. And the thing was that at the next Heathrow Road, the next stop, pulled up just normally. It wasn't until after the trouble started that drivers began to be a bit wary, and they would refer to these trams as spivs. The spivs were very flash characters. You see, they were very good to look at, very flashy, but they didn't work too well occasionally.
So, it seems we have the answer to the demise of the Coronation. The culprit was our old friend, the over-complex control unit. It might have given one heck of a smooth ride, but it was full of gremlins. Sometimes it jammed on, resulting in 20 tons of tram hurtling down the prom unable to stop. Hopefully, that won't happen when Phil gets behind the controls. Because ours has been fully refurbished and has arrived back, all wrapped up like an early Christmas present.
There, that. Hope it doesn't drop it in the pit.
Don't even think about it. Here we are. Oh, this is better than Christmas, this is.
It is, yeah. Go on.
Well, there we are. Whoa, it's all new.
Hey. Beautiful.
Isn't it just? Wow.
That got it?
Oh, wow.
It's looking good. The only new van back in the world, eh?
Yeah,
in the world.
With the control unit back, it's time to put it in the roof and install Claire's new insulated trolley pole. The first job is to gingerly winch the control unit back up into its housing.
Well, I hope we don't break it at this late stage.
Right, this way, do we have to rotate it? So, fight for the spanners.
That was a good job, wasn't it,
Yeah,
Joe?
brilliant. Smashing that.
Nice one, Claire.
Yeah,
That wasn't
smashing.
too bad.
No, it was grand, wasn't it?
Yeah. A lot easier getting it in than taking it out.
Struggle, wasn't it?
Well, that's fantastic.
Right,
job.
let's get the tower on.
Okay,
then.
still do it.
The tower, which Claire's overhauled, sits above the control unit and forms the base for the newly insulated trolley pole. The trolley pole is the key to making the whole tram work. Powerful springs on the tower keep it pushed hard up against the overhead wire. At the other end, there's a brass wheel with a groove in it, which simply rolls along the wire, ensuring a good contact is maintained at all times.
The trolley base rotates through 180 degrees, so that when you get to the end of the track and you want to turn round, just move it around when the trolley pole's sticking out the back so you can change direction. It's brilliant, really simple, very easy. Chaps, can I have the trolley arm?
All right, mate. Got it. Yep, got it. You're too short, Claire.
Come on, my arm's starting to hurt.
So wonder you've got the easier.
Yeah. Well, I think that's enough cranking up now. Do you want to give it a go now, Claire?
We have contact. Do you want to connect the cables?
Okay, mate.
Right, you put me some tape on that connection now, Les?
With the safety padlocks off, it's time to throw the switch.
Right, Jerry, go for it, mate.
We've got power.
Well, at least we've got power to the lights. But the control unit's real job is to supply 550 volts to the 4 motors. And we won't know if it's up to it until it's Phil's big day on the prom. And there's lots of work to be done before that.
Fantastic.
What we need now is more trim, more windows, seats in.
Yep.
Do the pretty, shall we?
Yeah.
We're nearing the end of the restoration of our 1952 Blackpool Coronation Tram. There's been one or two hairy moments, particularly with its over-complex control system. Toast! But now things are back on track. The control units and Axel's refurbished motors have been reinstalled, and electricity has flowed into the tram for the first time in decades. Well, if only to the lights.
We've got power.
Now the electrics have been done, it's time to turn our attentions to the pretty bits, turning her back into the queen she was in 1952. First up, Claire gets a crash course in floor laying.
Got a very steady hand for this job. I shouldn't have been out in the sauce last night. Oh, that's almost professional.
Then there's a few dozen windows to put in.
Okay. Bottom.
Each with its own authentically squeaky 1950s winding mechanism.
Go on, give it a whiz.
Yeah? Okay.
I'll hang on to it.
Right, mate.
Perfect.
Hello, Jerry.
Oh! Excellent.
Happy with that, mate?
Yeah, it's grand.
But the best bit are her rather ingenious seats.
This is looking good.
Isn't it? Take a seat, my dear.
But this is it, isn't it? If you
Yeah.
ask someone to describe a tram, they never talk about the motors or the control system or anything like that. They always talk about the seats that tip backwards and forwards.
That's
and
right.
the cladding and all the rest of it.
Shall we have a go?
Yeah. Let's change direction of travel.
Cool. I like this. Bing, bing. Yes, please.
Tickets, please. Oh, come on then, more seats.
Oh, I've got 22 to go.
Get on with it.
All right.
Beginning to look good inside, Axel can finally start to paint her outside, in the classic cream and green livery. After nearly 6 months' work, the tram is almost finished, and the squad are walking into the sheds for some last-minute tarting on the morning of her inaugural run. And as the electricity sparks her into life, we can see what a brilliant job everyone's done. For all that the control unit was a bit too complicated for its own good, this really is a tram to be proud of. A true queen of the rails. But the big question is, what's Philip going to think of her?
So it's the big moment, Phil.
Wow, what a transformation.
You haven't seen it for a while, eh?
No.
And hopefully you're going to drive it now.
Let me at it. Hi guys.
Hello, mate.
What a fabulous job. It looks absolutely superb.
You like
really
it then?
does. Oh yeah.
Is that good, mate? I might keep it.
You can keep your thieving hands up. Can I have a look inside? Come on. Wow, it looks superb.
It's all come together.
You happy?
I've never seen it like that. You've even got the original red flooring. That's great. That's super.
Beautiful, guys. You've done a great job. Looks like a ballroom, doesn't it? I feel like dancing. Anyone want to dance?
It's large enough, isn't it? What you need now is a show, someone to drive it, yeah?
Well, the tram's finished, and in a few minutes we're going to get going. But I've noticed that Phil is wearing a very smart tram driver's uniform, so I think I better smarten myself up.
Take me to my tram. And whilst I was getting changed, Philip was getting some last-minute instruction from 83-year-old tram driver Jack Nichols, one of the few people alive who actually drove one of these beauties back in their heyday.
Now, back to the joystick.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really need to push it straight down. You can just feed it one notch and just sort of listen, and you can just feel the car gradually moving off.
Right.
It doesn't sort of jerk off like some of the old cars do, you know. Any questions?
No, I think that'll do. The next question is, when can I have a go?
After me.
Well, everyone's on board. I'm suitably attired. Let's go.
With a Blackpool Transport driving instructor in the cab for safety, a very nervous-looking Philip pushes the lever forward for the first time, and yes, we're off!
Hey! Looks like all the stuff works.
Shush, shush, don't tempt fate.
It's smooth. It's smooth.
I can't believe it's working.
This is the moment we've all been working towards, and the weather, miraculously, couldn't be better.
Just got to change the point so we're going into the sea. Insert like so, and...
At the end of the line, Claire gets to spin the pole, enabling the tram to head back the other way.
You see that? It went on first time.
And as we head back down the prom, Philip is in his element.
This is absolutely fabulous. I never thought I would actually drive this tram up and down Blackpool Promenade, never.
This is really good. It was a huge project to tackle, but loads of people put a huge amount of effort in. It's all paying off. We've got a beautiful sunny day, trundling up and down the seafront. It's not a bad life.
I think I could be tempted to trade in my train set for something bigger, like a tram. Great!
Even though it's January and the temperature's not much above zero, the tram spotters are out in force to witness this historic occasion.
Well, there's me thinking, hundreds of people turn up, they're all taking photos. It's not me, it's the tram. They're all tram spotters.
But there's one fan above all that we're keen to show her off to. Daphne Luff, whose father ran the trams here from 1932 to 53 and was responsible for introducing our Coronation Tram.
And hopefully she's at this stop. Daphne,
Oh, hello. I thought I'd get on this one. It looks the best.
welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. Oh, it's lovely. Isn't it gorgeous?
How does it feel to see
Oh,
it?
yes, it's wonderful. Oh, I'm sure my father will be thrilled to pieces to see it now. After all these years, 50 years, it's a long time, but it really looks good.
Yeah, you're pleased with it?
Coming along the promenade, you know, watching it come along, it was wonderful.
In the sunshine, isn't it
Oh,
beautiful?
yes, it is absolutely marvellous. Oh, I'm thrilled to pieces with it, yes. Looks very good indeed. He'd have been thrilled to bits.
Her control unit may have been a disaster, but this beautiful folly and the man behind it, Walter Luff, can take credit for the part they played in making sure the trams of Blackpool are still running today. And for that alone, she was well worth restoring.
We've now got a working tram. Only a few months ago when the tram left St Helens, we had what was basically not a, I suppose, a rotting carcass, I think someone described it as. You know, to actually get the tram mobile, to get it back to its native habitat, running up and down, this is superb.
With Philip getting into his stride, it was time to give the spotters a treat. A ride on the only fully working Coronation Tram in the world.
Come on in, you lot, on you get. It's a free one. Put your room down the back.
It's great to be whizzing up and down Blackpool seafront, past the tower, sticks of rock, the whole lot. You can't wipe the smile off of Philip's face. It's really good.
To be beside the sea. Oh, I do like to stroll along the prom, where the brass bands play gently on.
Plenty of room for the larger man.
So just
Visit the website channel4.com/science to find out more about tonight's challenge. Next tonight, it's a new series. Air Crash examines the unbelievable experiences of 6 survivors from 6 different aeroplane disasters.
beside the sea.